Modern walking sticks are kind of like the most human invention ever if you think about it. Instead of just picking up a stick in the woods, we go mining, smelting, cutting, extruding, drilling, and assembling until we have something like this that does pretty much the same thing and then gives us anxiety about not choosing the right one. So as one human to another, I went ahead and just bought just about every walking stick at Decathlon, see if I can come up with some recommendations or at least some advice on what to look out for and what not to buy. I'll rate them in 4 categories: weight, collapsibility, features, and sturdiness. These are currently all branded Forclaz, but that is a brand that's going to disappear and be replaced by Simond or Simond, which is an old French mountaineering brand bought by Decathlon years ago. So if you're watching this in the future, it's the same stuff, just branded differently. If you're watching this in the past, then I don't really... in that case, you probably want to be watching a video on Bitcoin instead. Yeah, Bitcoin. Trust me on that one. Okay, weight. I'm kind of surprised at how many different models of walking sticks Decathlon sells without diversifying on things like materials, because these are all aluminum with foam handles, okay, all but one, and the weight is roughly comparable, the cheapest poles being lightest and getting heavier, up to 40% heavier, so quite a bit actually, as features are added. Which also means, of course, that you have to want those features, otherwise it's just extra cost and weight. So tip number 1, don't just buy the most expensive one just because you can. And for reference, the lightest carbon poles on the market, like this one, this is the black diamond distance carbon, weigh about 90 grams. Just to put things into perspective, these are not collapsible though, and that is of course a prerequisite for most hikers. All Decathlon sticks can be collapsed, but there's a couple of different systems here with the locking pop-up flute style closing on the cheaper MT100 models and folding combined with a buckle on the more expensive MT900 poles. Luckily, there are none of those annoying twist screw locks except on the MT500 shock absorber model, which I'm actually fine with because I wouldn't recommend that one anyway. A small segue for those of you who are into taking pictures. In the photography world, whatever the forum or the comment section, there's always someone asking, what is the best camera? What should I buy? And then there's always some smart ass answering, the best camera is the one you have with you, which admittedly doesn't sound very helpful, but there is some truth in it. If a camera is too big or unwieldy or expensive and you're not gonna bring it, then it's not going to do you any good. So either buy a camera that you know you're gonna bring or use your phone. The best one is the one you bring. And walking sticks are kind of the same in a way. You don't always know in advance whether you're gonna need them, and so I prefer them to be light and foldable. That way I can just always keep them in my day pack and have them with me when I need them. And these may all be collapsible, yeah, but only the MT900 models collapse small enough to fit in every pack, and they're also the fastest ones to deploy, which is a nice bonus. So they take the cake in terms of collapsibility. All poles are adjustable, some in 5cm increments, others freely adjustable with a buckle. I don't personally feel the need to dial them in super precisely, so I consider that buckle more of a nice to have than a necessity. That is, unless you are using them to pitch a tent. In that case, more control is definitely better, as you can see in this video. The straps get a little nicer as you move up the range, but they're all usable with the exception of the one on the cheapest MT100 pole. If you go for this one, I would recommend just trying to make your own from some other straps you got lying around the house. That's easy enough, especially since Decathlon already provided these nice wide attachment points. Handles, very important. You can see the pricing tier structure that Decathlon built into the range, with the cheaper ones having the least contouring on the foam. From the MT500s up, the handles are quite good. They're all foam with one exception. The MT900 ergonomic, that's a bit of a special design with a cork handle and more of a walking cane style top. I hadn't really noticed that when ordering, but it's a lot shorter than the others, maxing out at 105 centimeters. Not really sure it belongs in this lineup. Probably aimed at a different type of hiker, but I guess maybe one of them is watching this video right now. I hope you like cork. One of the MT500 poles has a super duper special feature in the form of a anti-shock system. I'm not a fan of those personally because they add weight and instability, and if you're using trekking poles correctly, there shouldn't be any real shocks to be cushioned. The idea is generally to climb mountains and not stab them. And even if for some reasons you want that anti-shock feature, I doubt this is the best implementation because the sound of the spring inside is pretty annoying. Luckily, you can lock the shock absorber, which I did after only a couple of kilometers. This is honestly my least favorite pole in the lineup. It's also on the heavier side and the one with the biggest pack size. If you're going to be using these on pavement or in the snow, you should know that none of them come with hiking pole caps or winter baskets. You have to buy those separately. That's the bad news. The good news is that Decathlon, as usual, sells a ton of replacement parts for these poles. And I like that because usually it's only the expensive stuff that gives you replacement options. When is the last time that you bought a €7 item and had €3 replacement parts and a 2-year warranty? That's got to be worth something. Before we tie everything up, just a few words on sturdiness. A trekking pole obviously needs to be able to hold your weight and inspire confidence that it's going to keep doing so for years. For my testing, these are all sturdy enough with only a small amount of flex, and it seems that the simpler, cheaper poles are actually the sturdiest. Adding anti-shock, adding collapsibility makes for more moving and interlocking parts, and that tends to add some flex. But again, they're all good enough, so this would not be an important factor in deciding between them for me personally. Okay, some buying advice. There are 3 poles in this lineup that I would recommend. One is the cheapest MT100 one. €7 a pole for something that does the job. I think that's a great deal. And if they had included a better grip, I would say that this was the best option for 90% of hikers. But since they didn't, the MT500 model at €17 a pole is probably my recommendation for most people, just because the grips are what you'll be holding all the time, and also being able to dial in the exact length is a pretty nice bonus, especially if you plan on ever using them to set up a tent. On the high end, the MT900s are pretty nice. You could argue that they offer not too much more than the MT500s for double the money, but depending on your backpack, that extra foldability might entice you to actually bring them, and that is, of course, key. Since none of these poles are what I would consider very light, if you want to save weight and stay within Decathlon's lineup, there is actually a couple of sets of trail running poles in their Kipron brand that look really promising, especially the Carbon X1 version. The truth is, I only noticed them rounding up this review, otherwise I would have included them here, but they're pretty similar to some carbon poles I've reviewed on this channel before. Not as sturdy as aluminum poles, easier to break, as well as more expensive, but significantly lighter. So depending on your preference, they might also be worth a look. That's all I got. I hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.